In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Yes, I'm wearing gloves inside. And I have a lovely pair of whites, reds, blacks, because these are my favorite colors. And they also help me regulate the light when it gets too shiny. But I wear them particularly for a style statement and because white is one of my favorite colors. Um, Welcome to another session of Lessons from My Mother. We are on lesson 59. Last week we couldn't do a Finding God session because I had a huge conference where I was one of the participants of the Academy of International Business Canada branch, and we had some wonderful, wonderful scholars who came from across the world, Canada, Europe, and other parts. Not studying in other parts of the world, but historically, or what's the word? Ancestrally, or in terms of originally from other parts of the world. We had a huge representation. It was lovely to discuss topics of international business, of trade, of ESG, of EDI. There's many things. So it was a lovely, lovely conference. So I couldn't do the Finding God session last week, but I'll do it this week. Today's lesson is almost a build-up of the lessons last week. Last week was about taking long breaths, which is something my mum has taught, and I've discussed it last week in substantial amounts of detail. But today, after that lesson, she saw the video and I spoke to her, and she said, "Well, you missed quite a few points of what I used to say." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yes, I used to talk about deep breathing as well, not just long breathing. And I used to talk about your morning routine and your inhale, exhale, and in the window and this and that." And I said, "Of course, yes, you did. Maybe I forgot to write it down, Mum." And then I was scrolling through all the lessons because, I have around 86, 87 compiled. And lo and behold, it was certainly one of the lessons I had written down about this deep breathing that she should tell us to do. So I'm going to start by explaining what my mum recommended to us as a morning routine. So she used to say, and still says, you wake up and you spend a moment or two in bed, just understanding where you are, and don't just jump out and knock yourself into things. Get up slowly, stretch your neck, stretch your shoulders, feel centered, look at all your joints. Are you okay? Is there pain? Fine. For a child, that normally takes around 15 seconds. A minute would be for somebody in their 30s, and then as you grow older, it could be 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It could be multiple, right? So she'd say, well, just take a minute, and then the first thing you do before you even use the restroom or eat or drink or do whatever, or even before you drink water, is you go to the window. And in Pakistan, we have these wonderful windows, and we have them in Canada as well, but we don't have them in England, is where you have the window as it is, the initial opening, and in the middle there's a netting, which in Canada is supposed to protect you from the snow, I'm guessing. And in Pakistan, it would protect us from mosquitoes and flies and honeybees and all insects that could come inside. Maybe even cats, because cats would be like, why would I bother with a net? I can just go around. So we'd have that. The negative side effect of having a net in Canada and in Pakistan was that it tends to accumulate a lot of dust because there's dust always in the air. And my mum would say, well, look, if you have a netted window, then you don't go and stand in front of that window and start breathing, because then you'll end up just breathing the dust. So if you could open the netted part for like 5 minutes or so, do that. If you can't, then go to the terrace, go to the balcony, go outside. Make sure you're outside. Now, for those of you who may live in Montreal or Canada or the US and might say, well, I live on the 21st floor, how can I go outside? I understand. Try to grasp the principle rather than the trivialities and the variables, right? So try to understand what is being said, that every morning you need to do some deep breathing, and it's better if you do that deep breathing in sunshine, which is exactly this lesson. So Because otherwise, my mum was a doctor for like 25 years or so. So doctors rarely get outside. Lawyers are going between the court and between the law firm and other places. Academics are traveling all the time. Architects are in and out because they're either in office or on site. A lot of professions have exposure to the sun. Medicine, not so much. Have you been to a hospital? There are very rare hospitals, the Evelina Hospital in London probably being one of them, which allows ample amount of sunshine to come in, and for not only for patients but also for doctors, because if doctors don't have the basic necessities of um, having a thriving living quality, then how can they even help patients for a long period of time? So she would say that make sure that you do deep breathing every morning in front of the window without a net, and make sure that around that time you are exposed to the sun in some way. So if you don't have a solar facing window, find a place where you can do that. If not, then once you do the breathing, before you go to leave 5 minutes early for work, and just go outside and stand where the sun is. Now, there are exceptions in Sweden, I understand. There are exceptions in Scandinavia and Antarctica, and there are exceptions in places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, or Northern Africa, or south of India, where it's so damn hot that 5 minutes in the sun can really affect your skin. I understand. Try to grasp this principle, because I get people saying, well, I live in Kenya, so I really can't stand in the sun. Yes, you can. Instead of 5 minutes, do 5 seconds. That's it. That's the only thing. Expose yourself to our solar friend, because the sun makes the earth livable, and the sun is the source of our energy, if you've seen anything related to Superman. So if it's too hot for you, go for shorter periods of time, but go. And she'd say that when we were younger, we didn't know the terms respiration or deep breathing or clearing out lungs and so forth. So she would say inhale, exhale, because you learn that in year 2 or year 3 in science. So she'd say, go inhale, exhale. Did you do your inhale, exhale today? Go do it now. And we'd go and we're like, she's like, no, not like that. Do it like this. And then she'd do it for us. She'd inhale with her hands and she'd show us. Then she'd hold it for a second. Then she'd go, and she'd demonstrate it. And for a 5-year-old or 7-year-old watching your mother do this, it's interesting, because you're not really being asked to read something or do some homework. You're watching an adult teach you something which is intrinsic to human existence, or existence of most living things. So she would do the breathing and we'd be watching, and then we'd copy it, and then she'd do it with us. She'd like, all right, let's do it together. And then she'd obviously modulate her breath according to ours. And that set up an incredible precedent. It was only when I was older, had gone, I didn't really think about it in a lot of detail. I just thought, okay, if she's taught us something, okay, fine, let's do it. But I went to university in Turkey, and I would come back home, and I suddenly start asking, Mom, why did he used to ask us to do that? And she said, you have to clean out your respiratory apparatus. I was like, okay, that's a huge medical term. Can you simplify it? No, I mean, I understood what she said. She said, look, because there's a lot of stale air at the bottom of the lungs, which doesn't really get flushed out. If you drink enough water, you periodically clean out your system. All your orifices can be cleaned out. Your internal organs, wherever water goes, can be cleaned out. People do juice fasts, people do aloe vera drinks, people do whatever to detoxify, to clean out. What you do, and the same applies to food, right? You can eat good food and it can clean out and it can really help your digestive system. But what do we really do for the lungs? Most people forget to breathe. Most people today don't really sit and say, they don't do that. We don't have time to think about it. Ooh, even that one breath is incredible. Yeah. That one breath, I felt it here. It went like this, like, oh, wake up. Isn't that incredible? So she used to say, look, we forget to do this all the time. And then that stale air I'm not saying it's just sitting there doing nothing, but because the oxygen isn't reaching the nether regions of your lungs, the final regions of your lungs, perhaps your breathing capacity is affected, perhaps the quality of life, perhaps the oxygen that is reaching your cells is affected. Everything is affected by it. And the simplest way to get around is to take 5 deep breaths every morning, or 10 or 15, or as many as you like. But take 5 deep breaths in front of the window or outside where you're exposed to the natural environment, and preferably to the natural sunlight. Not the light that we see inside, that's a whole different light, right? But if you're exposed to the sun and fresh air, and you breathe that in and breathe that out, that is essential to your functioning. And that last week I was talking about longer breaths because they do this, and when you're running and they can calm you down. You could tie both these lessons somewhat together, although they're slightly different, although the practices are different, and remarkably different. But that's a longer breath, and that is a deeper breath, and you can really tie them together. And I'm sure everyone knows this. If you haven't read a book or watched television or streaming or anything, you still know how to breathe. And you still know that deep breathing can give you a very quick, strong, positive effect. But still we forget to do that. That's what this lesson is essentially about. She would say, my mom has very astute eyes, so she's always watching everyone and things, and she's very like detail oriented. She was watching and she said, "You haven't been breathing properly." I said, "What?" "I was just watching TV." And she said, "You haven't been breathing." I was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even know I was breathing." She said, "Yes, exactly. It's not. There isn't movement happening. Why is that?" I said, "I'm just watching TV, just relaxed. Maybe I don't need to breathe." She said, "No, on the contrary. We always need to breathe, and consider the person who wants to breathe but can't. They're having respiratory issues, or they're having issues here or here or here. Um, Imagine that person who wants to breathe that fresh air that you so readily have available to you, but you just you just forgot. You're just not thinking about it." And I say, "Okay, I'll breathe." And I do one or two, and she's like, "No, no, no, not like this. Go to the window." And in England, windows don't have netting, so we'd open the window and we'd start breathing. And within 3 breaths, 5 breaths, it was almost as if the body would come alive and say, "Hey, man, where have you been? I've been waiting for you." And you'd say, "Oh, I almost don't want to sit back down now." Be sitting on the floor or on the sofa and watching something on TV, and it would have been an hour or two and just sitting and watching TV, like most people who watch TV do. TVs or streaming services aren't really our friends, are they? But that's a whole other story. Um, and then you do these 5 breaths, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to sit down anymore. I'll just stand for a bit," and I'd stand and watch the same program. But it instantaneously, I would lose interest in the thing that I was watching. I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but I certainly did. I'd be watching something, and my mom would say, "Take deep breaths, see some sunshine, look outside, look at the plants, look at the greenery, look at the sun, look at the sky, the sunlight." Um, and once I do that, I'd come back to the TV, and it would invariably seem dull and growl and boring and slow, and because my mind would be awake all of a sudden my mind would be awake, I'd be seeing things clearly, and suddenly I'd say, "Oh, let me clean this up." It was as if I had hit a mild reset. A mild reset had been hit with that 10-second, 15-second exercise of deep breathing, looking around, greenery, and sunlight. And I'm ever so grateful to my mum for doing that, because After 300 or 400 times, the brain caught on and said, hey, look, yeah, that's something that always tends to restart the system. Let's continue doing that. So now, especially when I'm walking outside with friends and, or smokers or drinkers or whoever, they're never really involved in the, oh, look around, look where we are. This is how smokers smoke. Oh yeah, how are things? Done. Smokers never go. No, I haven't seen that. Unless it's a late evening and you just there to relax. Same goes for people who drink outside. Same goes for people who eat. They're too busy with their phones and just munching down their pizzas or burgers. So, and the same goes for when you're going somewhere. You're too busy. Oh, let's go there. No, we're late with this, with that. We don't really appreciate it. I'm even guilty of doing this myself. I run. There's a lovely mini mountain type of hill in front of my house called Montreal or Mount Royal in Montreal. It's the center of Montreal. It's a huge park, and I run here. And yesterday I was running early in the morning, and I think I was 40 minutes through my run, and the ground was littered with orange, yellow, green, brownish leaves, and the air was clean. And some people were walking, some were biking, some were running. I was too busy in my breathing and just looking down and moving out of people's ways and just circumnavigating. And after 40 minutes, I said, and I started seeing, look at these trees, look at these mountains, look at the sky, look at the beautiful fresh air that I'm breathing. I've been to China, I've been to Pakistan, I've been to Dubai, I've been to all these places, I've been to New York, all these places where the pollution is so heavy that it blocks out the light, that it distorts the quality of air. And here I am, Mr. Fortunate, Mr. Lucky, running in this wonderful park with all other people, no dogs to worry about, no animals, no war to worry about. And I'm too busy just being all Mr. Fitness rather than truly celebrate and marvel where I am. I need to fix that. So then, for the remaining 23 minutes, I was running and taking deep breaths, and I was like, oh, look at that squirrel. Oh, look at that tree. And I really started taking it in. Even when walking, I would initially, when I was younger, I would look at houses and look at trees and mountains. But then after like 20 minutes, people are just like, oh, they're walking and they're either listening to their music or talking to their friends or on the phone. And many people are walking with their phone in their hand like this. I don't know why you do that. So this deep breathing, this exposure to sunshine is almost a reminder of, look, all these other things are great, but what is really going to help you are these basic natural things. And the more I research some past civilizations, whether it's the Mayans or the Aztecs or the Sumerians or the Babylonians, I start noticing that a lot of them talked about exposure to the sun and correct utilization of air and breath and oxygen, and it's truly remarkable. And I'm grateful that my mum drilled this lesson into all of us. I'm very grateful that she did this, and I probably will be making a vow about this of intentionally exposing myself to the sunlight and taking deep breaths, because most times you wake up and you just get into work mode. But I think intentionally I'm going to do that, and I think that would be really helpful to me and to whoever's listening and might consider following the same idea. But I'm going to stop here before it turns 20, and thank you so much for joining me again. Have a wonderful week ahead. We're near the end of November, and then it's the final big Christmas New Year month. So have a wonderful week ahead, and I shall see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.